You're now listening to Sanity at the Movies. Hooray! And today we are talking about the second of our Disney princesses. I'm Nathan, humble and obedient host. That's Jake, the pastor who's a master of going to the cinema.
That's me.
Which is what he says. He says to
I
his
say,
wife,
I'm going to the cinema.
Darling, shall we go to the cinema tonight?
That's right. Yeah.
Get some popping corn, some well-buttered popping corn.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I said. And then she was like, where are we going to find a cinema that is playing Cinderella? And so then I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm stupid. We'll just watch it on Disney Plus.
Scintillating social satire from the minds of Sanity at the Movies. It turns out people don't have to go to the cinema and they don't have to dress up for it. And actually, it's just no fun to go to the cinema when you've got a big TV with nice sound, which are pretty cheap. Especially in Trump's America, the economy is booming, I've been told.
Yeah.
America herself, a little bit of a Cinderella story. She was down on the ropes. I guess down on the ropes would be more like a Cinderella man story.
Wicked stepmother, Great Britain.
Her wicked stepmother, Nancy Pelosi. No. But I think everybody knows that our blood is red, it's white, it's blue.
Yeah. All the things.
There's an American eagle perched on Jake's shoulder right now.
All the time, really. It's
as there always
rarely
is.
Not there.
He's like, is it Maleficent that always has the, we'll be talking about her next time.
Yeah.
That always has the crow. Yeah. Jake's like American Maleficent. Maleficent. Maleficent, yeah.
She's in this film.
The actress?
Yeah.
Is it the same voice for the Wicked Stepmother?
It is, yeah.
There you go.
And the fairy godmother is one of the fairy godmothers, fairies of Sleeping Beauty as well.
Well, there you go.
I think she's Flora.
Is that the same blue one?
No,
or do I just want to say that because
pink one?
There you go.
I think Merryweather's the blue one.
Yeah, Merryweather's.
And then the green one's the one you always forget the name of. Fauna, maybe, or something like that. You get Flora and Fauna.
True or false?
I don't know.
The green one's the smart leader, like the Mo of these Three Stooges.
No, the pink one is.
Okay, that's the pink one. And then the blue one is like the dumb Gus kind of the one that's
that's the green one. The green one's like the ditz brain.
It's been a little while
since I've seen
Sleeping
Beauty. And the blue one's the sassy one who's competing with the pink one.
Would be played by Whoopi Goldberg if it was done in the 90s kind of deal.
Yeah. Fairy godmother, this one in Sleeping Beauty, and then Maleficent is the wicked stepmother.
Well, there you go. I did not make that connection because I
recognize their voices because I am a Sleeping Beauty fan.
I just thought you were going to say you are a Sleeping Beauty.
I am a Sleeping Beauty.
Jake
I'm also a Sleeping Beauty. That's right.
It's very beautiful to watch Jake sleep. I don't know whether I've ever watched you sleep or not.
What?
I mean, even if we were in the same hotel or something, I don't know that I would actually watch you sleep because that would be the height of creepiness.
That would be very creepy. I'm glad that you would not do that.
But I'm trying to think whether I've ever had the opportunity. You'd think after all these years, maybe I would have, but...
Yeah, we would have fallen asleep in a similar location.
I can neither confirm nor deny that Jake is a Sleeping Beauty.
Even on road trips, I think we've always had...
Separate quarters.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you're right.
And on road trips, I drive.
Yeah. I don't know that I've ever seen Jake sleep. I'm sure does it very beautifully, though. Or handsome.
Handsomely.
He's waking handsome. People should know that about him.
Yeah.
And so he's probably sleeping handsome. Be that as it may, folks, we are going to talk about 1950s Cinderella by the Walt Disney Corporation. Jake, were you looking forward to this one?
Yeah. I hadn't seen this one in a long time.
I don't think I'd seen it since I was a kid. The only thing I really remembered was there was a mouse named Gus, and he was always getting into scrapes and stuff.
Mm-hmm. You remember when it was recycled into theaters and you had it was around Christmas time and they had the little Jock and Gus Christmas ornaments at McDonald's or something like that?
I do vaguely remember Jock and Gus Christmas ornaments. I think I had some. I'm
gonna look this up and see when that would have been.
I'm gonna say 1992. Let's
see. I'm looking this sucker up.
You can trace the ornaments. There's a vintage 87 Gus and Jock ornament that you can find on eBay. There's also a 97, but I'm guessing that you would have been a little old for Cinderella.
Would have been too old. Yeah. Would have been 13. 87. These are the ones that I remember.
Yeah, the 87 ones. And
so McDonald's Happy Meal toys, 1987, I was 3, and I remember when these hit in the Happy Meals. And so I just assumed that there was a theatrical re-release. Otherwise, why would McDonald's be doing that? But maybe it was a release to home video.
Oh, yeah. November 20th, 1987, there was a re-release of Cinderella.
Guys, I was 3 years old. I just want to point that out.
And if you want to puzzle out why Jake remembers that, you can listen to every other podcast that we've listened, and I think between all of them, you can put it together. You can
put all those pieces together. There are reasons.
And also, there's probably a podcast where you just say
just explicitly say it, but this podcast will not be that podcast.
Nope,
You're going to have to go and puzzle it out somewhere else.
Right. So just listen to all our other podcasts, support all our Patreons, and listen to us talk about Cinderella for the rest of this podcast. Jake, are you a fan of the Cinderella story?
Yeah. Who's not a fan of the Cinderella story?
I don't know. When I was a kid, I think I thought it was kind of for girls.
It's just rags to riches, man.
Is it? Yeah, I guess she starts in rags and goes to riches. Yeah. I guess when other people go from rags to riches, everyone says it's a Cinderella story.
They do, yeah.
I guess it's kind of one of the top 2 or 3 iconic stories. Like you got a David and Goliath story, a Cinderella story.
Yeah, I mean, every March Madness basketball, you're looking for that Cinderella story. You're hoping that Cinderella can keep dance. It's the big dance, and you're hoping Cinderella can keep dancing till midnight. That's like the way that we talk about it. It's that underdog team that, has a magical little run that nobody expected. Mm-hmm. And you want them to go as far as they can. And then, midnight calls at some point along the way. But it was a great run. Or, sometimes they make it.
What Cinderella did you actually grow up with? Who was the Cinderella of your childhood? Because mine was Drew Barrymore. My mom loved a little movie called Ever After.
Oh.
We owned the VHS. I mean, Cinderella from like the blue-dressed Cinderella we're talking about today. I don't know why I'm using other adjectives. The Disney Cinderella, 1951. That's like who would have been in my mind as Cinderella, certainly who I had as a little kid. But the Cinderella movie that I've probably seen the most is Ever After, actually.
I don't even know that I've seen Ever After.
I don't think that you should have to see it, Jake. It's kind of like if you imagine teeny bopper aged Drew Barrymore doing her own proto-feminist take on like
Cinderella.
very, very lame 90s proto-feminist, like I am woman, I will save the prince kind of thing. Not even as subtle as a Frozen. Then you can watch Ever After. But I bet there's a whole bunch of people listening to this that really loved Ever After and grew up with it. Because if you're about our age, like I wouldn't be shocked if your wife really liked Ever After, or at least was thoroughly familiar with it from
I'm sure she was thoroughly familiar with
sleepovers and
stuff like that. Although they tended to watch a lot of horror movies.
Well, there you go.
Sleepovers.
Obviously, your wife, a notorious sinner.
Yeah.
And reprobate.
Yeah. So most of these, like you just look up popular Cinderella movies, I have not seen them.
Well, let's see. I've seen the 1950s Cinderella, obviously.
That one and
the Disney remake with Lily James.
Yep. I've seen those. But just going down the list, you've got A Cinderella Story, If the Shoe Fits.
Never seen it.
A Cinderella Story, Once Upon a Song.
Never seen it.
Another Cinderella Story. It looks like a sequel of A Cinderella Story, Once Upon a Story.
Makes
Cinderella Story, Christmas Wish.
Yep. Are these all like Netflix originals or something?
They're just
or Hallmark.
They're what Google pops up. Into the Woods.
Sure, that's got Cinderella in it. What about your Ella Enchanted? And
Ella Enchanted is coming down the line. I'm trying to figure out what the subtitle of this L one though, because it's not Ella, it's L.
There's L.
Then there's the 1950 Cinderella, and then there's Ever After, and then A Cinderella Story, and then The Slipper.
Cinderella Story's got Hilary Duff, right?
Yes, that's the Hilary Duff one. And then there's Ella Enchanted, and then there's a Cinderella, just a live action something or other. And then After the Ball, The Glass Slipper, Cinderella and the Secret Prince, Rags, which is a Nickelodeon something or other.
There you go.
Once Upon a Time in the West, Cinderella. And this is a lot of bad looking things on here. Sabrina.
The Teenage Witch?
No, Sabrina, the movie with Martin Sheen and
Martin Sheen. You mean Audrey Hepburn and
no, this is the
Humphrey
1995
Bogart?
Remake with
starring Harrison Ford.
Ford
and some lady.
Yeah, Julia Ormond.
Yeah, Julia Ormond. Didn't really go on.
Sorry, the way that Harrison Ford was. I want you to cut that. That's embarrassing. I mistook Harrison Ford for Martin Sheen in this photo.
They were both men that lived in the 20th century.
I mean, it's really small, but...
Oh, you know what, folks? I'm not going to cut it because I just looked at the photo and I can totally see it. I get it. Now, I've also been watching a lot of West Wing.
I should have remembered.
Yeah, people remember that one fondly, but it's not that great. It's not worth remembering. That's my hot take for the day. I actually don't really like either Sabrina. That's my hot take. Sabrina is just not a very good story, I don't think, actually, when it comes down to it. I like Audrey Hepburn. I love Humphrey Bogart.
How about Jerry Lewis as Cinderella?
Oh, good old Cinderella. You know, I think I've seen that. I don't really remember it. I think there's a part where Jerry Lewis gets hit on the head and makes a funny sound or pulls a face or something.
No way.
I'm just thinking. I have a vague memory of that.
Might happen in a...
Yeah. Vaguely effeminate. There might even be some comedy in there. I'm not sure.
I'm just going to say that my Cinderella was Disney's Cinderella. There's just no... Entertainment Weekly gives Ever After the single best Cinderella adaptation, followed by Kenneth Branagh's 2015 Cinderella, followed by Disney's 1950 Cinderella, followed by Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella.
That's right.
1997. Is that starring Brandy or something like that? Do I remember that right?
It's one of those Rodgers and Hammerstein's properties, if I'm not mistaken, that's never been made into a proper movie. I think Julie Andrews even did like a televised version of it or something like that way back in the day. But you'd think like Rodgers and Hammerstein do Cinderella would be like a big deal.
They did make it into a film, and it was Brandy and Whitney Houston.
Right. It was okay. So I got a little bit more information in addition to what Jake just said. It's actually the only Rodgers and Hammerstein musical written for television and was originally broadcast live on CBS as a vehicle for none other than the most famous person to be associated with Rodgers and Hammerstein and the best. She's a female. You really like her. She runs up a hill in a nun outfit.
Sorry.
Julie Andrews. Yeah. I guess they've remade it since then, but isn't that weird that there's a Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella version out there somewhere with Julie Andrews and like it's not a thing that anybody knows about or cares about?
Yeah, that's weird.
And except for Brandy, I guess, did a version.
Yeah, Brandy
did a more modern
Whitney
version.
Houston was the godmother. So so the Julie Andrews, Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella is number 6 on this list.
There you go. Maybe we'll have to track that down someday. What is your favorite version of Cinderella now? I guess you've only seen the 2, and I've only seen 3, maybe 4.
Rodgers and Hammerstein did several. So they're on this list 3 times.
Really?
They did a 65 version starring Leslie Ann Warren. So the number 4 was Brandy and Bernadette Peters and Whitney Houston. Number 6 they got, and that was Julie Andrews. And then they took the 10 spot with 1965 Leslie Ann Warren.
There you go. That sounds like something that would be worth hunting down, probably.
Does not benefit from comparisons to the 1957 Julie Andrews adaptation or the 1997 incarnation. Warren comes off as shrill and cloying when compared with Julie Andrews' perfect voice and unaffected sweetness.
Well, it's pretty hard not to come off as shrill or cloying or something when compared to
Julie Andrews, yeah.
One of the living goddesses of the 20th century, Mary Poppins herself. Practically perfect in every way.
Okay, so this blue dress, it's not really blue. It's kind of blue. Yeah.
Who? Cinderella from Disney?
I'm just going to say the 1950 Cinderella is my Cinderella.
Is your Cinderella?
Yeah.
Is it, in fact, the best Cinderella, though, Jake?
It depends on what we're talking about, I guess. It certainly sticks with it. I really enjoyed Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella. This one sticks with me more. It's got more color to it. It's got the mice.
It does have the mice.
And my kids ate the mice up.
Just like Lucifer wanted to do.
Just like Lucifer wanted to do. They loved those mice. And I remember loving those mice as a kid, too.
I remember loving those mice, too. I remember as a young lad loving the mice and not being all that excited about Cinderella herself.
Cinderella or the story. Well, that's the smart thing about a princess movie is you've got these doofus boyish mice that are getting into trouble and fighting the cat and gonna die. There's like danger and risk and death all around each corner for the mice.
And meanwhile, there's a bunch of boring girl stuff for girls.
Yeah.
What I like is how much I don't think I ever realized until I'm watching these again now as an adult, like watching Snow White for this podcast and watching Cinderella. I love how the animals cue you as a kid how you're supposed to feel about the heroes. They'll be cheering on Cinderella from the sidelines or saying boo, and Gus will be swinging his fist.
Cinderella, yeah, Gus. Yeah.
The birds will be shaking their heads sadly. It just you never don't know exactly how you're supposed to feel with this Greek chorus of cute little animals to react for you.
Yeah, a step up from Snow White's
menagerie
of animals. Snow White had a very impersonal menagerie of animals, and these animals are dwarves.
Yeah, basically. I mean, well, here's the thing about Cinderella. She's, through the abuse that she's suffered, gone completely crazy, and now she sews little hats and
shirts for mice.
For vermin.
That's one way of looking at it.
It's really quite a sad...
That's one way of looking at it.
She also has bubble hallucinations, which was a very strange part of this story.
Yeah, she's just daydreaming.
Was she, Jake?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they were bubble hallucinations. I think she was daydreaming.
I think she might have done some
someday
shrooms.
Her prince will come.
Yeah. Well, all right, we're kind of all over the place here, but what did you think about this Cinderella? As we're talking Disney princesses, we've had exactly 2 of them now. I'm going to guess we both liked Cinderella better than, as a lady, like we'd rather hang out with her than Snow White.
Oh, yeah. But I like the movie better, too. I don't mind that movie being in the cycle. I do mind Snow White being in the cycle. If my kids are like, let's watch Snow White, I'd be like, let's watch something else instead. If my kids are going to be like, let's watch Cinderella, I might still be like, let's watch something else instead, but I'll be much more likely to be like, okay, sure, whatever.
Interesting. So to you, Cinderella is a movie that just is good and holds up and you like, basically? I mean, I'm not trying to, obviously we know it's a kid's movie and it's not going to quite do for us. I'm not trying to catch you on that. I'm just, for me,
you were bored with it?
It was a little boring. It was a little bland. Snow White has a real bad guy who's really scary.
Yeah.
This one, and then Snow White has an awful lot of dopey
stepmother's
songs.
A pretty scary lady, man.
Yeah, she is. When I was going to say Snow White, when Cinderella goes into her bedroom and the big shadow from the bed frame falls over the door. Yeah,
or even just like little nefarious things like, "Mother, how could you?"
I said if. Yeah.
If. This is a really nefarious way of selling that. She was awesome playing villains.
She was a good villain. I would say she was a good enough villain that it's really disappointing that there's absolutely no on-screen comeuppance for her. I guess Lucifer kind of gets an on-screen comeuppance, and that maybe he breaks his back when he falls out the window there.
Although, I mean, he falls out the tower. He's pretty clearly implying that he died, right?
I think so.
I think there's like Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3 or something like that. There's like Lucifer on the cover, but I don't accept that as canon.
Well, we're going to have to watch all those, aren't we?
Nope. Theatrical releases, man.
So in your canon,
Lucifer's dead.
Lucifer's dead?
Yep. Bruno chased him out the window. He got what was coming to him.
Well, that's kind of like the opposite of a Cinderella story. A big bourgeoisie dog killed a poor defenseless cat.
Please. Lucifer is a pampered, protected little spoiled brat, just like the sisters. What we get is a cathartic little stand-in for the sisters.
I should have ended with the prince marching the sisters up the tower
and throwing them off. We weren't allowed to kill the stepsisters or the stepmom, so we killed the cat. That was their surrogate.
That actually is always a problem with Cinderella. Cinderella is so sweet and nice. You don't really want her to take revenge at the end.
Now she's going to order that.
Yeah.
Now that I'm the queen.
Well, and in the Lily James one, it actually is really moving when she says, "I forgive you" to Cate Blanchett. But then you still kind of want the prince to be like, "I don't."
Yeah.
Charles Perrault, which is the version, or Perrault, I guess, is that how you would say the French Perrault? He wrote the famous version that everyone keys off of in the 1600s. And in his version, the stepsisters actually do
die.
No, they ask forgiveness and then they get married to other suitors. So everybody always, lesser suitors, but they're fine. Everybody always wants to pretend like the old fairy tales are like really creepy and violent, but actually
sometimes they are.
And sometimes they are. Well, the other thing is then the Grimms got a hold of it in the 18th century or 7th, whenever they were. And the Grimms actually, in their first version, the stepsisters famously, in order to try and make the shoe fit, so to speak, the first one cuts off her heel and then the other one cuts off her toe, and it works. They trick the Grand Vizier or whatever that guy's name is, the Duke, whoever it is, but then some little birds sing a song and say, "Check the shoe. There is blood."
That you can't see through the glass.
But you can't see through the glass slipper. So the sisters get found out. And then it was interesting. 20 years later, the Grimms released their second version. And it turns out they did this a lot. They would come up with more awful fates for their villains down the line.
Huh.
Like originally the evil step queen and Snow White is just going to be put to death, but then they're going to eventually rewrite it so she has to dance in iron hot shoes until she dies. So in this case, the stepsisters still cut off their own toe and heel, which to me feels like a pretty good punishment. Just
you've got to live with this now.
You got to live with this now, and you're not going to be queen, and it's, hoisted on your own petard, kind of set your own trap kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the Grimms didn't think that was good enough, so they added the stepsisters cowardly-ishly show up at Cinderella's wedding, try to get in her good graces, and then pigeons peck out their eyes.
All right, then.
And there's this whole fairy tale conceit where they're walking on the left side and right side, and then a pigeon comes and pecks out either one of their eyes, one of their eyes, and then they switch, and then the pigeon comes down and pecks out their other eye.
I think what Disney needs to do is add more vindictive animals in this story.
Yeah.
Bruno chasing Lucifer out is not vindictive.
No, he was just trying to...
Yeah, he's saving the day.
Yeah. We needed the animals to capture and torture Lucifer.
Yeah. Peck his eyes out. Yeah. and then go after the stepsisters and have the mice pluck his whiskers out one by one.
Yeah, there we go. Just end with Lucifer on the rack. I think in Ever After, it's pretty nice the way they do it, because Drew Barrymore's revealed as Cinderella and all that, and she's going to marry the prince. And then the prince says, "Hey, I'm going to cut off the head of your traitorous sisters and stepmom.
Squandered your inheritance." And
Cinderella gets a chance to be merciful, but still kind of get hers, because she says, like, let's not do that. Let's just kind of treat them the way that they treated me. And then it cuts to them doing laundry or something like that.
That's pretty nice.
Which I thought was nice.
So what's happened since Snow White? Because Snow White was the first, not just the first Disney princess movie, but the first full-length Disney animated feature.
Right.
And that was in 1937?
That was indeed in 1937. And I think it's
this is in 1950.
This is exactly 1950, and you can sure tell when you look at Cinderella's bust line, when you look at her, not that you ever would, when you look at her hair, this is just like such a
she's now a 1950s housewife.
She is a 1950s housewife. Her dress, her slippers, the high heel glass slipper, the extreme high heel glass slipper that she ends up with, it's just all so 50s chic. But the important thing is 37, Disney has a artistic and commercial triumph, is able to build his empire. And then he has mixed results basically until Cinderella. So you have things like Pinocchio and Dumbo. I think that they actually hold up about as well as anything for adults, because they're scary and he's channeling his id. And
Pinocchio's pretty great.
Yeah,
it's scary. But
it's great. Fantasia.
It's a great way to torture your small children, though.
Yeah, it's awful. But this is the thing, the closest I think this and maybe Mary Poppins. That string of films is Disney the artist, Disney the person who actually cares about telling a good story, and is he's reaching inside himself and finding the darkness and finding the nightmares and the dreams and everything that Disney builds itself. The Dream Factory. I think he really was that leading up to Cinderella. But what happened is those things, they've all eventually made money and re-released, but they didn't make a lot of money then, some more than others. And then we go into the war years where he's not actually producing full-length animated things. He's helping produce propaganda films for the war and producing smaller scale things like Three Caballeros and things like that. And so Disney is on the verge of bankruptcy, basically. Like, he's not doing well and he needs a hit. One of the things that I don't like about Cinderella...
Does it feel cynical?
Well, it is the triumph of businessman Disney. This is very much like, let's go back, let's do a princess thing, let's do the princess thing, let's design a hit movie. Let's make sure that there's lots of animal slapstick, let's make sure that there's nothing too scary. And all the movies after that, your Jungle Books, your Peter Pans, they're just like, they're more kid-friendly, and there's a lot to love about them, but they're just not the same stuff that dreams are made of that I think some of those early Disney movies are. Cinderella is designed as a hit. We need this movie to pull us out of bankruptcy. That's exactly what it did. It gave them the capital to, like all the final successes of Disney's last years, the building of Disneyland and going into live action and having some successes with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Mary Poppins.
Oh, that to Cinderella. Like what we know as kind of the Disney corporation was built really on the back of Cinderella. Yeah, what I think it's pretty clear that this is the first Disney film that feels like a Disney film, like what you think of as a Disney film.
We have distilled the formula down. We know what people want. We know what makes this work. We know what was successful in the other movies, and we know what wasn't successful in the other movies. And we are going to just create it in a lab. We're going to make sure that there's the cute, lovable animal sidekicks. We're going to make sure that
the princess is pretty. She's got a hit song or two. We got some magic. We've got some drama. And that's it.
Yeah. We're going to see kind of the last surge of artist Walt with Sleeping Beauty, and that's pretty great. But there again, it didn't make money. Like Disney's story, it would be interesting to see a world where Disney had been able to give into his most artistic, I don't like to use the word artistic, but I'm not sure what other word to use, where he'd been able to follow those impulses and make lots of money. Like what caliber of talent would we think of Disney as? Maybe we would just think of him as one of the great film directors instead of one of the great film visionaries and businessmen, magnates. Yeah. It would be interesting to see that alternate history. But what we've got is pretty great. And I love a lot of the movies, and obviously they work for kids, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is the thing. I mean, you listed what? So we have Snow White, Pinocchio, Dumbo, do we have Bambi?
Pinocchio, Dumbo, Bambi, and Fantasia would all be in there. And those are all to certain degrees off-putting to children.
Yeah, I mean, Bambi's got cute talking animals.
But it's also got the most traumatic moment in all of Disney cinema, I think. Something that people all remember from their childhood.
Yeah, one way or another. So if you take all of those up to and including Cinderella, like you're going to pick one of those movies for just a fun family movie night, Cinderella is the clear winner. Like there really isn't a close second in my mind. You can say Pinocchio is a great movie. Mm-hmm. You can say that, Fantasia's fun in its own wild way. You can say that, Bambi, whatever you want to say, Cinderella is the clear winner. Like if I were to line all those movies up for my kids, they're going to pick Cinderella every time, even the boys.
Well, and then having perfected the formula, Disney goes into making movies, I think all of which kids remember more fondly and love more than those ones we just mentioned. Things like Peter Pan, The Jungle Book, 101 Dalmatians, which are all just like these...
Rescuers?
Yeah, I think
that's probably later.
That's after. That's after Disney's death. But in particular, while Disney's alive, Jungle Book, 101 Dalmatians,
Peter Pan.
Kids love those movies. And there's no kid, boy or girl, anywhere that wouldn't choose those movies over Dumbo.
Absolutely.
Fantasia, certainly. So he triumphed. He figured out the formula and it worked. And I wouldn't go back and change anything, I don't think. But I do mourn the loss of the guy that was able to, frankly, just tap into nightmares the way that he was. I mean, that guy was interesting. Like, what is it? The sequence in Pinocchio with the boys turning into donkeys. Yeah. I have not seen that movie since I was a little kid, but it's really stuck with me as something that's really...
It is scary. It's still scary. What happened just the other day? Oh, my oldest daughter had been reading a Pinocchio book of some kind, some novelization of Pinocchio. I don't know what it was for school. She's in fourth grade. So she really wanted to watch Pinocchio. So she put it on. And then I told her, mom told her that she could, and she put it on and then she had to go somewhere. Like she and Amanda and like the three oldest kids all left. And I was like at the dining room table doing work or whatever. And this movie that they had started was on and they were all gone. And all of a sudden I have these little kids like that are terrified.
Right.
And I realized that or my wife or somehow some combination of us, we've managed to leave my 7-year-old, my 5-year-old, my 4-year-old, and my 3-year-old alone with one of the most terrifying Disney movies of all time. It was...
You've got the whale, you've got the donkeys,
He's separated from his dad. Not only is he on his own, not only is he being kidnapped, not only is he in this scary place where people are trying to get him to do bad things, and the bad things are then having these horrifying consequences and turning them into donkeys. Like, then he can't figure out where his dad is, and his dad's in the belly of this whale, and he can't get to him. It's like all of this. It's
and there's this
really
heavy,
scary and traumatic.
There's like this heavy moral pull. It's always his fault. Like,
yeah,
he wanted to go to Pleasure Island, and he got talked into it. It's like, oh, if I disobey my dad, now I know I'm going to be turned into a donkey, and I won't be turned back. I won't be saved at the last minute.
No, you're going to be carted off to be a slave donkey somewhere. It's pretty heavy for kids. Yeah, it's heavy stuff for sure. And there's no mercy even for he's punished for his naivete as much as his disobedience, like his trustingness.
Yeah, he wants to do the right thing. It just feels like fate has other plans, and it's just...
And then, the fairy gets him out of his jams, but just the same.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah. And the adult appreciator of cinema in me would love to see 2 or 3 more of those, but I am glad that we had Uncle Walt and that he gave us fun movies that I really loved as a kid. These days, I'm not as excited to go back to things like 101 Dalmatians because it really is a lot of slapstick, but it's good. I mean, it's good slapstick, and it's fun, and it's well drawn, and it's cute.
There's always a good song in there.
Yeah, there's always a good song.
Cruella de Vil's a good song.
Cruella de Vil. I mean, you want to talk about the tip-top evil woman. Well, Maleficent, we're going to talk about her next.
Yeah.
But Cruella de Vil's got to be in the top 10 evil women in Disney films, though.
Top 10. I'm going to give her that, yeah.
Yeah, top 10 evil. Yeah, it's a pretty low bar, really. Top 10 evil women in cinema, maybe.
All right. I mean, you're going to have Maleficent, the witch from the stepmother, the witch from Snow White. You're going to have Ursula.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the big ones.
Those would be the main ones, yeah. Those would be the top 5. Well, what else is there to say about Cinderella as a movie? What did we say actually what we thought of Cinderella as Cinderella? The thing that was outstanding to me was how much of a 1950s image of domestic
babeness
perfection she was. It's fun to be removed enough from a culture that you can just observe without bias what made that culture. I don't know how to talk about this, but guys liked a certain kind of woman back then, and it's interesting to see that. That's what I'm trying to say.
True. They did.
And a certain kind of woman was presented as the ideal woman.
Yep.
And
she's very different than from Snow White.
She's very different from Snow White.
Yeah.
Snow White is like a relic of kind of the simpering silent movie kind of heroine.
It's got some Betty Boop going on.
Little Betty Boop. Snow White's not nearly as slender or as well defined as Sleeping Beauty is. Like, you can just...
You mean Cinderella?
Sorry.
I mean, Sleeping Beauty, she is the slender one.
Yeah, Sleeping Beauty, we're getting into kind of the Audrey Hepburn era. But we're straight up Marilyn Monroe, Life magazine, buy the perfect beer for your husband, those kinds of cheesy old ads that you see. That's the ideal of woman that Cinderella is, and she's perfect. And then I love that the stepsisters are like ugly old hags in the vein of...
We got the brunette and the redhead.
The brunette and the redhead, yeah. Nothing like as beautiful as beautiful blonde. The blonde.
The blonde bombshell.
Did you like Cinderella on a personality level? Did you think there was anything there as compared to Snow White? And looking forward to the other princesses we're going to be talking about?
There was more there. I mean, she cares for the animals. Mm-hmm. She talks to them. She's sweet to them. She tries to have a good attitude about her work.
She also, unlike Snow White, has just a little bit of a bad attitude about her work. Like she'll make a sort of wry comment, like "I'm coming." You know, she'll say things like
"I'm coming." Yeah. It's just a little bit of like,
a little more spunk and backbone.
Yeah, she's gonna cover her head with the pillow when the bird comes to sing and to wake her up in the opening scene. But she's making a joke, and she's actually ready to get up and glow right up with the morning, just like any Disney princess would.
Right.
Just like,
but that's like her job.
Shrek liked to make fun of. But
that comes with the territory, though. As far as the kind of character that does those sorts of things, she's definitely easier to put up with than.
She's just more of a normal person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like what she gets onto Bruno's case. Lucifer does the little fake thing, and she kicks Bruno outside, but then she's like doesn't have a whole lot of sympathy for Lucifer.
Yeah, she tries to think of something nice to say about Lucifer, and
she can't.
Snow White was just simpering enough that she probably would have come up with some nice thing to say.
Yeah,
because Snow White was just dumb, but Cinderella's not dumb.
No,
she knows.
Not dumb.
She knows she's being mistreated. She's going to take it well, but yeah, I was surprised by her. I will say this prince, though, what a zero. Is this the worst Disney prince? I think he's got like 3 lines of dialogue.
Wait, I don't even know your name.
Come back.
How will I find you?
We just recited the entire part.
I think that's it. But his dad, the king's got lots of personality.
The king's great.
He wants those grandbabies.
He wants those grandbabies, and he's going to dream about the grandbabies.
Dream about the grandbabies. He's going to be like, certainly some maiden in this kingdom would make for a good mother. I mean, wife. He's going to say things like that. He's going to be super annoyed with his son for gallivanting out around and killing dragons or whatever he's been doing, hunting. Man, just settle down, get married. I'm going to kill you, Duke, if you don't make this happen. Like,
I liked his relationship with the Duke. For me, that's the right level of slapstick for a Disney movie. Like, I don't need Sir Hiss getting hit over the head. Like, all that kind of stuff is a little bit much for me a lot of
You
times.
really like to pick on Robin Hood, man.
Yeah, it's just not my favorite, but I like it, and I understand why everybody thinks this is the best. Everybody's not wrong. I'm just smarter than they are. A way of saying everybody's wrong. No, I understand why you all like Robin Hood. And this is not an Agatha Christie situation. I like Robin Hood too. I just don't think it's really a classic, and we'll have to watch it sometime.
It's the music.
It is the music. It's the music as much as anything, and I get that. And the comedy. People love it. But for me, the comedy is a little bit much in Robin Hood. It's a little bit silly. I like silly comedy. The level of silly comedy between the king and the duke in this one was perfect for me. When they have their big slapstick scene where they're bouncing on the bed and everything.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. Oh, and this movie did have one line that, as an adult watching it by myself, taking notes for a podcast, really made me laugh. What was it? Oh, it's when they present the dress. The mice present the dress to Cinderella, and Gus says, "Happy birthday!"
Yes, yeah.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, I feel like that's something that I do all the time. When that line hit, I was like,
"That's like a phrase that's entered into your brain."
That's entered into my brain to say "Happy birthday" out of context for comedic effect, and I wondered if Gus was the reason that I do that.
Right. Like if you just give somebody something or...
Yeah,
happy birthday.
I assumed that it was... I think maybe I assumed that it would have been Frosty the Snowman. Every time he comes to life, he says happy birthday, but...
I've never seen Frosty the Snowman, actually.
Oh.
I know the song. I know nothing else about it. I know he was a holly jolly soul and had a corncob pipe and all that, but...
And a button nose and 2 eyes. Yeah, no... Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was funny.
Gus still got laughs out of me. Gus wanting to fight.
And he might be one of the best of that type, the dopey Gus. I don't know who the other...
He's got some spunk, and he's just like, he's terrified. Cinderella saves him, and now he's Cinderella's guy. Like, he's going to go fight that cat. He's going to go fight the sisters. He's going to go fight the stepmom. He's going to fight them all. Like,
I will say... I had a lot more trouble having patience as an adult with everything to do with the dwarves. These mice, I didn't feel like fast forwarding or anything. It was fun.
Yeah, and then if you had kids in
it would have been better with kids, obviously.
I mean, I have a son who makes every movie enjoyable on an ironic level. Mm-hmm. And sometimes makes good movies unenjoyable. But if it's a bad movie or if it's just a fun kids movie, he's great because he is out of control. Outside, he's in a perpetual state of ecstasy.
Well, he's the same son that when we watched the Lily James Cinderella and I happened to be over and her pumpkin crashed, he stood up, sank to his knees, put his hands in the air and went, "No!"
Yeah, and he's not, what he's doing in those moments, what's so awesome about it is that he is not acting, he is not playing to the crowd, he's not repeating something that he's seen on TV.
No, he's
just like so caught up. He gets so sucked in. Mm-hmm. He is unaware of himself. And he is just purely emoting full on 100% of the time. And it's amazing and hilarious. And those tensions and those is Gus under the the cup, or is he not? You know, is he going to get trapped in the corner? Like those things are super fun to watch with him because he is so into it.
Yeah,
and he laughs at all the punchlines, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm sure would have made this movie.
But even normal kids, as opposed to Ian, even normal kids make it fun to watch those scenes, or that much more fun to watch those kinds of scenes.
Yeah. I mean, how am I supposed to have fun with those scenes as an adult watching them by myself? Even if I didn't have a chance to watch this with my wife, even just having her there would have made everything that much more
fun.
More fun.
Yeah, you would have had fun watching it with her. She would have had fun with it.
I mean, even an adult comedy, you really don't want to watch by yourself because it's just like,
part of the point of a comedy is being able to laugh with people.
Yeah, and laughter is contagious. Like you can watch a movie that you, in some theoretical way, think is hilarious, and you won't really laugh that much if you're watching it by yourself. No, but you invite somebody
there are certain friends that that you have that they just make a comedy that much more fun to watch.
Because they're enjoying it.
Because they enjoy it. They laugh. They have an infectious laugh, and it just makes it that much more fun.
I remember seeing one of those Austin Powers movies in the theaters and it just being the funniest thing ever. And that's Mike Myers really isn't my bag. And I don't like, if I turned one of those on now, I don't think I'd enjoy it at all. And it's not because I've grown up. I don't think I would have enjoyed it then, but just watching it with an audience, like a full house of people that were there for it was a lot of fun. What else is there to say about Cinderella? I guess we've talked our way through most of the major characters. What did you think about the music in this one?
It was... I mean, Bippity Boppity Boo is a classic.
That's a classic, yeah.
Is it Someday My Prince Will Come? Or no, that's Snow White.
That's Snow White. Someday My Prince. Yeah. This one starts with that really lame song that the choir is singing during the credits where it's like, Cinderella, you'll go to the dance. Cinderella,
no, but then you get romance. Cinderella.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Or Night and Day. It's either if they're like that and the reprise. Those are good. Those are fun.
Yeah, those are good. I think the only one that stinks is that one during the credits. That sort of...
With the birds
whistling. The one where she wakes up is fine.
Okay, so just the
credits song.
That's Disney did that a lot. They had a little chorus while we're like opening the book and the narrator is telling us the backstory.
And one of my pet peeves is songs that are only applicable to the movie. I understand it's necessary in musicals, but like there's a Rodgers and Hammerstein, I think in Carousel, where there's a really beautiful song that they're singing about a clam bake. Like, we're at a wonderful clam bake. And it's like, I can't use this song in my life because I will never be at a clam bake. And I put that together with, there's just a genre of songs where it's like, this is about something so specific that no one would ever sing about except for somebody made a movie. And
Here Come the Men in Black.
Here Come the Men in Black. And so we needed a song.
Galaxy Defenders, baby.
Galaxy Defenders. Vanilla Ice's Ninja Rap from
Go Ninja, go Ninja, go. Fun story. My 4-year-old made Alexa play Ice Ice Baby this morning.
Oh, wow. That's the way culture works, folks. And hopefully we'll all be defeated by China and an end will be put to us soon. It'll all burn soon. But I mean, like the great movie songs are like Stayin' Alive or Let It Go or Moon River that stand completely apart from the movies that generated them, but also are really iconic in the movies. The bad movie songs are like Wicka Wicka Wild Wild West, where it's like...
James West, Desperado.
There's no way that Will Smith would ever sing about this unless he was trying to cash in on...
Big paycheck.
A really bad movie that he did instead of doing The Matrix. Oh, here. You want me? I'll ask you real quick, Jake, about some of the thematic, because that's what we do. Yes. We talk about the deeper themes of these things.
the deeper themes.
So, do you think that the narrative that a fairy godmother comes and chooses you is...
It's unhelpful.
Is it an unhelpful narrative?
An unhelpful narrative.
It's like if you're a white bourgeois kind of beautiful lady, then yeah, everybody will be in it for you, and the little mice... disempowered mice will just live to serve your whims and make you happy, and the fairy godmother will live to empower you, and actually you don't really have to do anything. You just wait for all the people who are less empowered than you to make your dreams come true.
That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is magic in fairy tales is always a stand-in, or almost always a stand-in for... It's the externalization of the guiding hand of providence.
Right.
And so if you want to say that actually things work out well in the end for those who are humble and righteous, and providence favors the humble and the righteous. There's a real life logic to that, even though it doesn't always work out that way either.
No, but fairy tales are full of characters that exist just to redress things karmically, basically. Just, a fairy godmother who's just like, you deserve to have something good, and these other people deserve something bad, and so I'm just going to wave my magic wand and
make it happen.
Flip the script, because that's what I do.
Certainly, the reason that those stories have that appeal is because they all appeal to our innate sense of justice, which correlates to our innate understanding of the relative injustice of the way things play out in the world.
Yeah, we all know that there's people working at McDonald's right now that deserve to be queen, and we certainly know that there's people that are in power that
don't deserve it. Yeah, well, I mean, if we want to get all gospel coalition-y, we all know deep down that good should triumph, the humble and the righteous should be elevated, the wicked should be cast down, and it all will in the end, and there's a happily ever after coming. If we want to be all gospel coalition-y about it.
Well,
we all want to be fake C.S. Lewis being real Carl Jung about it. We can do that. And it's true. And that is why those stories have that appeal.
Well, I think there's also something to be said. I've been thinking about this a lot because on the Bookening, we've been doing The Hobbit, and I've also been watching the Hobbit movies. In the Hobbit movies, they give Bilbo lots of agency. Like, he's always making choices to become a better Bilbo, which is them, I think, trying to fix what they saw as probably a flaw in the book, which is that a lot of times it's just Gandalf saving his skin, or him stumbling on a magic ring, or him just getting lucky.
Yeah.
And there are a few subtle areas of growth for Bilbo, but basically he doesn't have all that much agency. So I've been thinking about this, and I think there's something for stories where characters actually don't have that much agency in their own growth. Their own ascendancy. Like, it actually jives with real life a little bit more than the hero's journey thing where I just have to make the choice. That also jives with it. But how much of my sanctification has not been because I've made great choices, but because God has been kind enough to change my life circumstances, to move me from one town to another, to put me in different jobs, to give me different friends.
A quest for intentional self-actualization may not be what we all need after all.
No, some of us just need to get along as best as we can and
entrust our lives and circumstances to God, and be content in the circumstances we find ourselves in, and trust that if we humble ourselves in the sight of the Lord in due time, He will raise us up.
Well, that leads us into maybe my last question, which is, we all know what the Campbellian formula is for men. Is there a Campbellian, is there a womanomyth, I'll call it. Get it, folks? Is there a parallel woman journey, and does it look the same?
It's the opposite. It's the woman is always on the quest for domestic bliss. She's trying to get home.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to get to a home that's established. She's waiting to be rescued so that her home can be established. Why stories like Cinderella end with a marriage is because, therefore happily ever after, is because her prince came, just like Snow White sings about,
right?
Saves the day, and now she gets to have a house. What is Snow White looking for? Even once she goes, oh, maybe there are children here.
Mm-hmm.
I will take care of these 7 childish dwarves. I will be a mother to... now my prince is going to come, and he's going to save the day. And now I'm going to get to have my home. And the same thing's true of Cinderella, and the same thing's true of Sleeping Beauty. Whereas, the hero's journey is you leave your home, and you go out, and you seek adventure, and you conquer your inner demons, and you become a better person, and you can't go back to home as was at the end of the day because you've been fundamentally changed.
I don't know. It's interesting. I was just thinking of the classic female stories versus the classic male stories, and there's no getting around it. You can rail against the sexism all you want, but most great female myths are essentially passive in nature.
Yeah.
They are, I am going to wait, and I'm going to maintain my virtue in the waiting.
Well, and that's why people make a big deal out of the modern feminism inversion of that, or attempt to invert that. It's why Elsa has to go on her own self-actualization journeys. She has to have a hero's journey of her own, and we make the feminists will make a big deal out of that and write about it on purpose.
Oh yeah, that's what they're doing. But it's also why their stories just aren't as resonant. Like, if you want to make a good Rey is the next Jedi story, it actually has to, in some way, if the hero of your Star Wars narrative is going to be female, it actually has to, in some way, not be Joseph Campbell's thing, not be she leaves home and learns to self-actualize. It has to, I think, be more like somehow, and I don't know how this would work in Star Wars or whether you'd want it to work in Star Wars, but I think the classic woman story is she maintains her virtue and basically her meek and quiet spirit in the face of the things that happen to her. Yeah. So that's Esther. That's Mary that's Ruth to take the three biblical narratives. Mm-hmm. That's every fairy tale.
Yeah. And that's princess. Not robbing those women of agency in any way, shape, or form.
Or strength.
They're not the hero of their story, but they have to display faith and humility and courage and endure suffering and hardship.
In some ways, it's much harder because they're not going to be able to just cut off the dragon's head. Esther
can't just deal summarily with Haman. She has to appeal to the king, to her husband, and that involves real risk. Like, he might not be happy. It was an audacious thing for her to do. Mm-hmm. And he might have her killed or relegated. And you know what? She's wise about it. She prays and she trusts God. And, I think it's Mordecai who says, perhaps you were raised up for such a time as this. And she does. Everything gets, flipped on Haman and Mordecai gets elevated and all that stuff happens. But Esther doesn't play the man. Esther has to play the woman and the wife, and she does it well.
She has to humbly submit to becoming the queen in the first place, to Mordecai being like, hey, you should do this really difficult thing that, it's completely different. And by the way, in case anyone's confused by this, I think when we talk about these kinds of archetypes, it is very useful to talk about the biblical stories, and we can't avoid that. I might sometimes use the word myth awfully close in the same sentence to a biblical story. It's not because I don't think the Bible stories are true, but it's because they are the defining stories, the archetypes that define Western civilization, and that all the fairy tales and everything you can't divorce the biblical narratives. Biblical narratives are more than just archetype, but you can't divorce them from being archetypal.
Well, and then there's, of course, the big story of Jesus comes, Jesus saves his bride, his bride who was helpless, lost in her sin, by the side of the road, wallowing in her own blood, if you want to take the metaphor from Ezekiel, or dead in sins and trespasses, sacrifices for her, is raised up and conquers sin, death, and the devil in the process, and puts them all to a final end at the end. And then there's the marriage feast of the Lamb, and they live happily ever after.
Well, and I think that's a great story. And I think pagans are so boring and bland and stupid. Like, the only thing that they can think to make women strong and interesting and colorful is to make them exactly like men. I know I'm saying nothing that many other Christians haven't already said, but there's such great stories to be told about the Cinderellas. And, there's a big difference between simpering Snow White, who I don't think we like very much, and Cinderella, who we like a little bit better, and Belle and Beauty and the Beast, who I think we'll like better still, if I'm guessing correctly. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you can have a lot of strength and agency and interest and color and intelligence and all these things while occupying the roles and the stations that God's designed for you. You don't have to try and climb out of a window like Emma Watson.
It's true.
That's after you made a deal with the beast. That's all I'm trying to say, folks. That's really all I've been trying to say this whole podcast. Anyway, I think that's why the Cinderella's story's resonant, is because
it would be good in either case if you didn't make fun of bakers for being bakers. I think being a baker is a noble profession. I don't think we need to mock it as being boring and provincial. Just saying.
Well, Jake, there has to be something more than this provincial life, though.
Does there?
I'm going to make Belle my wife. No, I'm already married. I guess that's all to say about Cinderella. I don't think it's probably worth us doing an episode on the Lily James Cinderella, because I don't know what we'd say besides, we liked it.
It was nice.
But I really like it. For whatever reason, I've seen it 3 times, and I've cried all 3 of them, and I just think it's really sweet. I think she's a sweetheart, the way that she plays the part, and that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And Kenneth Branagh, it's like the one
He knows how to milk it.
He really knows how to milk it.
Yep. So, you want him doing those big, broad, sweeping types of things.
Yeah. Not a great man for subtlety, Kenneth Branagh.
Give him a whole spool of iron thread.
Yeah.
Sew on all the buttons.
Yeah, he likes to make sure those buttons will never come off. A little bit like he's not. He's like the opposite of the mice wives and the way they sewed that dress. Those stepsisters tore that thing to shreds. But if Kenneth Branagh had sewed those buttons on,
never coming off.
The sisters' fingers would have been broken. Well, folks, thanks for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with something or other. Sanity at the Movies was brought into existence and turned from rags into riches by your two fairy godmothers, Jake and Nathan. Till next time. Oh, go to Sanity or patreon.com/Sound of Sanity to support this work. And until next time,
bippity. I can't do it.
I think that's a pretty good ending right there.